When I saw this week's thing of role models, I thought, I've already talked about 3 role models that I admire. But I got to thinking, what was the commonality about them? What did they have in common? So we're going to learn about the sage, the sailor, and the aviator, and a common theme that runs through all of them. The sage was born about 480 BC in a kingdom just south of Nepal. He's born a prince, and he had a prophecy over him that he would either be a great sage or a great warrior. Well, his dad wanted him to be a great warrior. So he had a plan to isolate his son in a gilded palace, and he would never see anything that would disturb him. And he would grow up in the life of absolute luxury so that he would be totally attuned to his kingdom and want to expand it. Siddhartha grew up with everything, especially as an adult: wine, women, and song. He had everything that he could possibly imagine. And yet at the age of 29, with his charioteer, he took a trip to a part of the city that he'd never been before. And what happened? He saw the 3 terrors of mankind: disease, old age, and death. And among humanity, he had a different response, because most people would say, that's the way it is, God's will, karma, who cares? That's what's going on. But he was bothered intensely. And like, what can I do about this? How can I mitigate the suffering of the world? He would go back to his palace with his brand new son, kissing goodbye at the middle of the night when he was asleep, and leave and become a renunciate. He gave everything away. For the next 6 years, he would become a yogi, and he would meditate deeper and deeper, till finally, after 6 years, he would be sitting underneath a Bodhi tree. And for 49 days, he would have the final meditation. Either he would solve this problem or die. At the end of 49 days, in his words, like a chick hatching from his shell, he came out of the meditation, realizing the truth of reality, and he had become a Buddha. He would formulate his teachings, which would be the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and then history would change. Our sailor was born in 1728. His name was James Cook. His parents were commoners. His dad was just a common laborer. By the age of 18, he wanted to do more than, dig dirt. And they wanted him to do more of his life because he was incredibly intelligent and very good at math. And he went on to become a sailor in the Merchant Marines. He was born in Upper Yorkshire by the east coast of the English Channel. And in 8 years, he became what is called a master's mate. And he learned everything that you could do to run a boat, and also the art of navigation and then cartography, making naval maps. But he wanted more. He ended up joining the Royal Navy, and he would actually go to war in the 7 Years' War and would serve with distinguish. And what happened was that he became a cartographer, a naval cartographer. And by 1768, his work was so recognized that the Admiralty itself praised his work, and the Royal Society took recognition of him because he shot an eclipse. Well, at that point, they were planning to travel in England, to have in England the first scientific expedition around the world. And they made one of the most momentous decisions in world history. They promoted James Cook, master mate, up to command position, Lieutenant Cook. And he took command of the Endeavour. And the idea was to sail ostensibly to Tahiti, where they would shoot the transit of Venus, and then they would do what is called the triangulation of it to determine the exact distance from Venus from the sun, and they would get the Earth's distance from the sun. It was very complicated, it had to be done, and off they went. And for 3 years, he would be traveling, and he would change history. The Aviator was born in 1728. His name was Chuck Yeager. Now, Chuck was born in the hollers of West Virginia, and he kind of talked because he was a hillbilly, right? And his dad was a machinist, and he learned the machinist trade. Well, a year before World War II started for America, he went into the Army Air Force, worked as a machinist. Once the war started in America, they needed more pilots, and they created a special class called the warrant officer, where a enlisted man could become an aviator, a pilot. And that's exactly what happened with Chuck. And he became a fighter pilot in World War II. He flew a P-51. Looks a little bit similar to this little plane that you'll see right here. Chuck wore a plane like an extension of his body. He was a natural stick and rudder man, and he was a born fighter. He would notch 11 kills on his belt. Now, in 1947, what happened is that because he was recognized of his outstanding skills, he would be invited to go on out to fly the X-1 plane. This was the experimental plane that was to break the sound barrier, to go through this brick wall in the sky to see if we could actually penetrate it. Very, very dangerous. Well, it did, and history changed. So all three of these men changed history. What did they have in common with each other? They were three incredibly different personalities. Start with Yeager. Yeager was a hillbilly through and through. He was a happy-go-lucky guy, loved to get fights, go down and drink at the bar when he wasn't flying. But when he was flying, he was totally 100% focused, the consummate professional. James Cook, when he became captain, he became a British sea captain. Take a look at him right here. I hope you can see this, the determination on this man's face. When you were a captain in the 18th century, you were an absolute monarch of your ship. He was not a tyrant, but he was a firm disciplinarian, and his word was law. And he would use the lash if needed. And oddly enough, the men respected him for this because they knew this, the trip that they were going on was incredibly dangerous, and you had to have discipline on those ships. If you lost discipline, the ship would sink. It was just about that simple. Our third, well, the Buddha is known for compassion. He conquered fear. When he became the Buddha, one of the most amazing things about the transformation is that there was no emotional states in him that he hadn't mastered. And one of them was that he became 100% fearless. And this is how he could be in the state of utter compassion and control his entire life. Well, each man had events that would help prove what they were doing. With the Buddha, it was very interesting. He had a cousin that was insanely jealous of him. The cousin was named Dembada. And what happened with him is that he tried to murder his cousin, the Buddha, numerous times. One of the ways that he did it, this is the legend, is that he had a war elephant. So you can see our little war elephant here, right? And he got the war elephant intoxicated and set it charging at the Buddha. The Buddha is sitting there, meditating in a pose. Here comes this raging elephant at him. Raises his hand, and the elephant is cured of his madness and falls at the Buddha's feet. The Buddha had no fear. Captain Cook, like I said, was involved in the 7 Years' War. And one of the things that Captain Cook, when he was a master's mate on the ship, the Rosemead, you can see right here, very carefully, you'll see those little circles there. Those would be gun ports. And so what happens when you're sailing and fighting, they were fighting the French at the time. The whole idea is that you come at a ship straight on, and then you swing either to port or starboard, and then you fire your cannons at each other. And Cook wrote in his diary before the engagement, he didn't know if he had the bravery to do that. This is incredibly dangerous fighting, everybody. Having a cannon coming at you and you're looking at the white of their eyes as they're firing at you is about as dangerous as it gets. And he overcame his fear and he became fearless in all of his actions. The greatest of them all, as far as overcoming something, was Chuck Yeager. Chuck Yeager was invited to be, like I said, a volunteer to fly the X-1. The X-1 was a flying bomb, everybody. They had killed so many people, they were on the walls of the bar that it was at. And what happened was that the flight, right before the penultimate flight, this is not the X-1, but a representative of it, he would be going to his supersonic, trying to hit supersonic speed, and the plane would be shaking so much, it would hit his head onto the canopy and shatter the canopy. When he came on down, he had to fly the next flight. And that's where the fearlessness was. He was able to do it and change history and break the sound barrier. Madam Toastmaster.